Polls have opened in the Netherlands as 4 days of voting in the EU parliamentary elections begins. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has vowed to deport criminals from Afghanistan and Syria following the Mannheim knife attack.
Far-right mavericks could craft a new alt-right group in the EU Parliament. We find out more with the Euronews Super Poll. D-Day ceremonies underway as Biden stresses Washington's and NATO's commitment to Ukraine.
Polls have opened in the Netherlands as 4 days of voting in the EU parliamentary elections begins. It's the only country to start its single-day vote so early, but will be followed by Ireland on Friday and the rest of the EU nations over the weekend. 373 million citizens will be casting their votes in the elections, which are expected to deliver significant gains for the hard right. In the Netherlands, voting comes 6 months after the far-right Party for Freedom became the largest in the Dutch National Parliament. Polling suggests it will build on that popularity. At least 30 people, including 5 children, have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school in central Gaza, according to local health officials. The area's local hospital also said it received 6 more bodies from a separate strike on a home. Israeli forces claim the school was being used as a compound for Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, but no hard evidence of this has yet been produced. Schools run by the United Agency for Palestinian Refugees have functioned as shelters since the start of the war, which has displaced most of the territory's 2.3 million population. The strike came after Israel's military said it was launching new air and ground operations in central Gaza. Doctors Without Borders says at least 70 bodies and 300 wounded people, mostly women and children, were brought to a hospital in central Gaza earlier this week after a wave of Israeli attacks. The United States has continued to put pressure on Israel and Hamas to accept its 3-phase ceasefire proposal, which would see an enduring end to fighting, the release of hostages, and a large influx of aid to the Strip. But Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has so far resisted the US's calls, fearing acceptance of the deal would collapse his government.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned Germany on the use of its weapons by Ukraine to strike inside Russia would mark a dangerous step in the war between Russia and Ukraine. He hinted that in return Moscow could provide long-range arms to strike Western targets.
Конечно, подобные действия будут окончательно, они сейчас уже дошли до высшей степени деградации, но будут окончательно разрушать международные отношения и будут подрывать международную безопасность. И в конечном итоге, если мы видим, что эти страны втягиваются в войну против нас, а это и есть их прямое участие в войне против Российской Федерации, то мы оставляем за собой право действовать аналогичным образом. Ну, в общем, это путь к очень серьезным проблемам.
Germany has recently joined the United States in authorizing Ukraine to hit targets on Russian soil with long-range weapons they are supplying to Kyiv.
Ведь Украина-то в Соединенных Штатах никого не интересует. Интересует величие Соединенных Штатов, которые борются не за Украину и не за украинский народ, а за свое величие и за свое лидерство в мире. И ни в коем случае не хотят допустить какого-то ни было успеха России, именно потому, что считают, что в этом случае будет нанесен ущерб лидерству США. В этом весь смысл того, что делают США. Где присяжные вынесли вердикт виновен.
At least 4 people were killed and 26 injured after a passenger train heading to Ukraine collided with a freight train in Pardubice, Czech Republic. The crash took place some 100 kilometers east of the capital, Prague, where the train had departed on Wednesday evening. Authorities say they have now closed the major track between Prague and the eastern part of the country as investigations begin. Prime Minister Petr Fiala calls the crash a tragedy and offered his condolences to relatives of the victims.
A candidate of the far-right German AfD party was stabbed in Germany's southern city of Mannheim. Heinrich Koch, a candidate in the local elections, allegedly saw an individual tearing up campaign posters and tried to stop him. The 25-year-old suspect allegedly assaulted him with a cutter. The victim was not critically injured. The alleged attacker has been arrested and is said to have psychiatric disorders.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz has vowed Germany will start deporting criminals from Afghanistan and Syria again after a knife attack by an Afghan immigrant left 4 wounded and 1 dead in Mannheim last week. The 25-year-old attacker had come to Germany in 2014 as an asylum seeker. Addressing Germany's parliament, Scholz promised that deportation rules for all who commit or support criminal or terrorist acts would be tightened.
Deshalb werden wir unsere Ausweisungsregelung so verschärfen, dass auch aus der Billigung terroristischer Straftaten ein schwerwiegendes Ausweisungsinteresse folgt. Wer Terrorismus verherrlicht, wendet sich gegen alle unsere Werte und gehört auch abgeschoben.
Germany does not currently deport convicted asylum seekers to Afghanistan or Syria, but the Chancellor said his government was working on a solution to enable deportation to Afghanistan's neighbouring countries. Migration has been one of the major topics that far-right and mainstream parties have been exploiting in order to gain votes in the European elections. Scholz and his Social Democrats, as well as other mainstream parties, have been trying to depict themselves as tough on migration and radical Islam in hopes that voters won't turn to the far-right Alternative for Germany to tackle these issues.
Far-right parties need to be ready to overcome their divisions if they want to make an impact in the next EU Parliament. Germany's AfD is searching for a new political family after its expulsion from Identity and Democracy, and it might decide to form its own one.
The number of far-right parties are on a path of radicalization, which means that I don't think all of them will be put together after the elections. We'd rather see not 1, but 3 instead of 2 political groups. That's also the reason why Marine Le Pen recently made clear that she wanted to have a clear distance vis-à-vis the AfD.
If projections are confirmed and AfD gets 15 seats in the European Parliament, it would then need 23 additional MEPs from at least 7 member states to form its own parliamentary group. Talks among parties have already started. According to the Euronews poll center, Bulgaria's Revival is one of the parties that reached out to AfD about a potential alliance. There's also movement concerning other right-wing MEP candidates from Poland, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Hungary and Slovakia. The common ground among them seems to be a softer approach towards Russia, as Ukraine is set to remain a top issue in the new legislature. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in France for celebrations marking 80 years since D-Day, the biggest amphibious invasion in military history. The visit comes as he seeks to get assurances regarding Western military support to Ukraine after securing limited permission to strike targets inside Russian territory. US President Joe Biden has joined the ceremonies too. After saluting World War II veterans, he hailed America's contribution to the liberation of Europe and stressed that the US needs to keep playing an international role in the future.
The United States and NATO and a coalition of more than 50 countries standing strong with Ukraine. We will not walk away. Because if we do, Ukraine will be subjugated, and it will not end there. Ukraine's neighbors will be threatened. All of Europe will be threatened. And make no mistake, the autocrats of the world are watching closely to see what happens in Ukraine, to see if we let this illegal aggression go unchecked. We cannot let that happen. To surrender to bullies, to bow down to dictators, is simply unthinkable.
D-Day commemorations also feature the UK royals, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and the host country's president, Emmanuel Macron. He awarded 11 US veterans with the Legion of Honor, France's highest distinction, during commemorations in Colville-sur-Mer.
Monsieur Richard Stewart, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur.